India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geostrategy was concluded in capital New Delhi, the 9th Raisina Dialogue. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the three-day Raisina Dialogue. Prime Minister of Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, was the chief guest of the inaugural session, and he delivered the keynote address where he spoke about strengthening partnership with India, which he said should be the cornerstone of Europe's foreign policy.
Strengthening our partnership with India, and I'm speaking about Europe, should be a cornerstone of Europe's foreign policy. And this is certainly true for my country. We have made good progress over the past years towards achieving that goal, but we have much further to go. And Greece has an important role in this endeavor.
The Greece's Prime Minister, in his address, also spoke of reforms of international institutions such as that of the United Nations, and he favoured India to be represented at the UN Security Council.
Whether at the United Nations, where Greece is seeking a rotating seat on the Security Council next year, at the G20, which was so expertly chaired by India last year, or through the European Union. And by the way, Greece is supporting the reform of the Security Council of the United Nations in order for leading countries such as India to be represented at the highest table and in order for their voice to be heard.
So addressing the Raisina Dialogue, Kyriakos Mitsotakis further said that the war in Ukraine is much more than a local war on European soil and termed it as a brutal challenge to international stability.
We Europeans do apply double standards, focusing on Ukraine at the expense of wars and crises in the rest of the world. And maybe there is truth in that allegation. But I would like to make the point here in Delhi that Ukraine is much more than a local war on European soil. It is a brutal challenge to international stability and the international rules-based order that India has supported and has every interest in maintaining. And I think we all have a responsibility to use the power we have on the international stage. And none of us can afford to sit on the sidelines. And I'm convinced that on Ukraine, India has an important role to play. It has a voice that should be heard.
Further, the Prime Minister of the Hellenic Republic described India as a consensus builder and voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world.
When it comes to shaping the direction of the global debate and addressing the great challenges that we face, India is now often regarded, and rightly so, as a consensus builder and as a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world. And we too often forget that the raison d'etre, the real reason why the international system was created in the first place, was simple, because nations large and small recognized that their true interest lay ultimately not in antagonism and in conflict, but in partnership and cooperation. And we cannot afford to overlook the cost of conflict and the human tragedy and suffering it unleashes. And this 9th edition of the Raisina Dialogue is taking place at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions.
India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, thanked Greece's Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis for his address at the 9th Raisina Dialogue.
Our collective appreciation to Prime Minister Mitsotakis for what I'm confident all of you will agree was a truly inspirational and thought-provoking address. His message of democracies that deliver resonates strongly, particularly now, particularly here. Prime Minister Modi's presence amongst us, as always, is a reminder of India's growing engagement with the world, especially in the last decade. He has shown us why it is as important to listen and reflect as it is to articulate and express.
So this 9th Raisina Dialogue continues from today, that's Wednesday, till Friday, February the 23rd.